Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
You go with these?
We can do that?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Make sure you can hear all right. So,
Yep.
So what do you think, man? 7 Bs, man. I did it right?
That's the vocal mic, man. If it's good enough for Bono and Joe Rogan and Michael Jackson, yeah.
Joe Rogan. That thing took off. All
A
right.
little bit.
You ready?
Yeah, man.
Man, I appreciate you doing this.
Dude, thanks for being patient with vaccinations and
Of course.
and all that stuff. I appreciate you having me.
Of course. I won't. I promise not to take up too much of your time.
Dude.
But I'm going to probably hit you with 1,000 different questions from 1,000 different
Right on.
directions here. But
I'm here.
Yeah. So how are you managing the pandemic, and do you see us slowly coming out of this here?
I hope so. I think the vaccination thing, even just being here, I think it's helped out quite a bit. My work has been shut down for the most part of when it first started.
Yeah.
And then started to evolve a little bit and got into a lot of mixing, like people sending me files and doing a lot of screen share stuff.
Yeah.
But recently, had people slowly in after people are getting vaccinated and feeling a bit more comfortable, and limited people in the building. But it's strange times. You just have to evolve and try to get better at it, man.
Yeah, I mean, and there's obviously something to that organic experience of being there, whether it's in a discussion like this or a recording process, right? To see the folks in the room having all that magic happen there, and it's got to be tough just passing files back and forth. I know it's the hip thing to do in today's era, right? But
it is. We did a band I've been working with a lot in the past 6 or 7 years, Gene the Werewolf, like a rock band, a fun, aggressive rock band. And it's a real collaborative thing. It always has been a real collaborative thing with the way we write the songs and record them.
Okay.
But this one was crazy weird where we weren't in the room. We were never in the room together. Historically, we'd be in a rehearsal hall or my space.
Yeah.
But it was literally Zoom things and FaceTimes, and it was tough.
How did it work? Did you obviously made it work, right? Yeah. But that had to be incredibly difficult. I'm not a big fan of Zoom. I won't do a Zoom show. I mean, because I just don't want to go through the latency and the rest of the good stuff.
Yeah, it's a rash.
Yeah, but how's that work on your end?
Well, with those guys, it starts with John, the singer, the main songwriter in the band. He'll send me a demo, and sometimes it's a verse and chorus or bits and pieces, and we all work on it and but typically we do that in a room.
Yeah.
This time it was, doing it like a board meeting. It was really crazy, man. Well, I like the pre-chorus number 7, and who votes for, the old bridge and that kind of stuff. So it was tough, but we did it, and I had him in. Didn't even see him. I left the front door open.
Yeah.
Knew what mic to use in the booth. I had everything set up. He came in. I had the talk back on. I said, "Okay, dude, let's go. Here we go." Because we had, I did the drums. Nick, the drummer, great drummer, but due to COVID concerns, he didn't want to come over. So they asked me to play the drums, and so I put the drum track down. And those guys took some of my guitars at home, the guitars we use on all the records, and they tracked them like the DI, like right off the instrument. And so I took the DI tracks and put them back through the amps that we always use, and kind of built a tune. And then John came in and sang it. So he was the only guy in the studio for that one. Where typically it's a community. It's, we're all sitting around, oh, that sucked. Okay, that was great.
Yeah.
And now you have to do that like, I see my wife who's in the corporate world, with the emails and the copies and the to whom it may concerns and all. And it was like that making a rock and roll record, man. It was hard.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That's a whole. And the first thing I thought about when I was, doing a little prep for the show was there was a favorite record of mine, and I mentioned off air, Psycho Circus of Kiss. And I guess the very last track on there is after I think Bruce had passed away, the producer. There was a very commercial track that was in a movie or something that the band was doing, and you can hear in there that the drummer Peter Criss sang there, and they must have just emailed the files to the producer. And if you really listen, knowing that, it's so obvious back in '98 that this track
was done somewhere else.
Was done analog. The rest of the song appears to have done digitally. So as soon as they put his vocals in, you hear all this hiss. It's so.
Oh,
you
wow.
can just tell.
I'll have to check that out
Hopefully
again.
things have come so far since then, right? But I mean,
Yeah. Sometimes it's user error too. I mean, people love analog stuff, and there's pros and cons to it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We're going to get into all that, but first, let me get a little background on you. You are a Pittsburgh native.
Yes.
Okay.
Born and raised here. Spent some time in North Carolina as a little kid.
Yeah.
Came back West Mifflin over in the South Hills.
Right on.
And then went to college for about an hour and a half in Beaver Falls. Decided I could make more money. Yeah, man. Found out that I was going to go be a music ed teacher, and I had a athletic and music grant, to go.
Yeah.
So you had to do it,
Of course.
But then I found out from a buddy that I could make more money playing music than what I was going to be a music teacher.
Right on.
And I found out that there was no dancing, swearing, drinking, smoking. I didn't read the fine print. I didn't read the fine print on the brochure.
And that's important.
And the funny thing was, there was about 7 of us there at this school, the football, and they had us like in this back corner of this one dorm that nobody ever went to. I think we were like the ringers or something. They didn't want us in the gen pop with the rest of the good kids. But that lasted for us, a year, and then I bailed and just started playing music every possible place. A buddy of mine turned me on to this agency. It was like a temp agency almost, but for musicians down in Florida.
We're talking late 80s, early 90s?
This would have been early 80s, mid 80s.
Oh, okay.
And basically, so I'd go out 6 weeks. I'd be with a 10-piece horn band out of Detroit.
Oh, really?
And then I'd do 6
weeks.
Because
hair metal was a big thing in that era.
Did that. So I'd go from playing Wilson Pickett songs in Detroit for, on that circuit. And then I'd go play all the dance stuff in Saginaw, Michigan. And then I'd play Rat songs in Hollywood, Florida. So I was playing all these different tunes.
Like a hired gun.
Exactly, like a temp. Different bands, and through that time I was writing songs because you have your days off.
Absolutely,
it was killer dough, all expenses paid, but I had a lot of downtime. So that's when I got into bought a guitar and started really getting into songwriting.
But initially you were a drummer. That's your
initially I was a guitar player. Bailed on that as a little kid because I was playing on top of Old Smoky and not. I want to rock and roll all night, So I bailed and got into drums and did drums, and then my brother. Killer guitar player.
Yeah.
I started stealing his guitar at the house and started teaching myself a little bit.
Got it.
I play guitar like most people speak a second language. I'm fluent. I can tell you where the bathroom is. I can order a drink. But I'm not a guitar player. I'm a guitar operator. Just enough to play on a record here and there. Yeah.
Okay. Growing up, what was the big bands that influenced you?
Oh, Kiss was the band. Zeppelin.
Yeah, yep. We're roughly the same age, from the same era.
My folks were jazz heads, so there was Gene Krupa records and stuff like that. So as a drummer, that was great. Buddy Rich records and Louis Bellson and stuff like that. So
what about the jazz drummers from the 70s, early 70s? You familiar with like Lenny White and Billy Cobham and
definitely aware, but at that point the ship had already sailed. I love the rock and roll stuff.
So Neil Peart had to be a thing for you.
Yeah, but
not much.
But more. I was either Bonham, but loved Elton John records and Stevie Wonder records.
Right on.
The early Michael Jackson records, all that 70s pop stuff.
Got it.
I think that era of music, that 74, 75 to 1980, because you had...
There was some session guys, like Steve Gadd and those guys, and Peter Erskine and those guys.
Sure. But music in general, you had great dance music like the Bee Gees. You had Zeppelin, you had Kiss, you had the Sex Pistols, you had anything you wanted music-wise in that 6 or 7 year period.
It was a hell of a decade.
Dude, everything there.
It was a hell of a decade for sure, man.
So I was fortunate to have that as, my the sounds around you as a kid growing up.
So your palette was wide.
I like to think so, because I was always a fan of songs, and I still am a fan of songs over players. I don't care about the guitar solo or what the drum beat is. If it doesn't serve the song, I'm a fan of the song. When you listen to a Stevie Wonder song, you say, "Oh man, that drum." No, it's just a great song. Mm-hmm. When you listen to a Sex Pistols song,
not many.
No, but it's just like.
But the couple they have are badass.
It moves me, But you're not thinking it's like a great bite of food. You should just enjoy it. You should not have to. Now there is music there's more expression in it, maybe like a jazz thing.
Like Di Meola stuff, I look I'm fond of his playing, so maybe there's a bent there for me. But there's really intricacy and beauty in the intricacy
100%.
if you can appreciate that.
100%. As we were talking before we started, I'm more of you're a fan of that jazz fusion, that 70s thing.
Yeah.
I was more of a fan of just the 70s pop stuff,
straight
what was
on.
on the radio.
Straight
and
on.
those Elton John records, the Fleetwood Mac records, the Kiss records, those things, you know.
Yeah, those bands, 70s moving into the 80s, there was a lot of pop sensibilities blended through hard rock.
Yeah, even especially in the 80s when maybe the music wasn't as great, where everything was a little more homogenized, but
commercialized too.
There you go.
If it's even a word, I don't know if that's even an effective word, but it seemed that way. Yeah, the production, and of course, so you're bent for production. Did you always feel like that's something you were more interested in when you were younger, or did that come later?
I think it came from playing in all those different bands.
Okay.
You know, when I was doing that as a young guy. And it's important, this is pre-internet, so the country wasn't as homogenized. So what they dug in Detroit was different than what they dug in Saginaw, was different than what they dug in Topeka, was different than they dug in Nashville, New Hampshire.
That's so cool, though.
So that was an education for me, playing in all those different style bands with different musicians in front of countless different pockets of audiences, and learning what worked and what didn't work. You know, so that, I think, was my master's degree in making records, because what you had to do was you had to tailor yourself for those audiences, tailor the music, and work the band and manage the band.
You had to adapt.
Yeah, and that's what basically record production is. The band comes in and we decide what's strong and what's weak, and what the best presentation of that particular song is.
Okay.
And then we that's what we do. And I think playing with those different musicians in different audiences that again that weren't homogenized. That was a really big thing for me. I think I really learned a lot, and to put me kind of where I am now, as being a fan of songs, and then seeing what we needed to do to make them work in different audiences with different musicians.
Okay, so you played actively, I'm guessing, until late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah, I came back in Pittsburgh. I was on the road for about 10 years.
Okay.
But gone a lot, and really missed my family, missed my folks, missed my brother.
Right.
So I came back and
early '90s.
Yeah. And then started, took a gig because wasn't making any more cash on this. So took a gig at Swissvale Music Store.
Right on,
and that's where that kind of the studio thing picks up. Played in a few bands locally, different things, you know, a little here, a little here, a little here. But the music store was exposed me to new recording technology and stuff like that.
Got it, yeah.
And that's where the gradual transformation of me being the recording guy in the music store, and then me and a buddy rented the second floor of the music store and started stockpiling gear, and we started making horrible recordings up there. And then I started spending less time in the music store and more time up there, and then I became, you know, the full-time studio guy now for whatever it's been, 20 years.
Yeah. At that point, did you start your own studio enterprise, or were you pretty much still part of Swissvale Music?
Well, me and the partner, Mario, we rented that from the music store, the two guys that owned the music store.
Got it, okay.
Mario wanted to get out of it. This is maybe 10 years ago, and the guys that owned the music store bought Mario out. So for a minute, I was partnered with those guys.
Right.
But the two guys that owned Swissvale broke up, and the one owner, Gary, and my brother, Kevin, partnered and bought a new music store out in Irwin.
Got it.
So now I'm luckily, you know, the guy that owns the building now, I've not moved. I'm still in the same damn chair in the same room that I've been.
That's awesome.
So I just have a new landlord now. So it's cool.
Right on. Okay, so you start, I'm guessing mid-'90s, really, let me ask you this, did you determine that the record producing and engineering could be like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah, I think...
This was my career path.
Yeah, I knew that I couldn't play drums. Again, being in a car and a van and a bus for those 10 years as a young guy, traveling again from Nashville, New Hampshire to Topeka, Kansas. Yeah, let's do it. I don't want to do that as an old dude, you know. But as a young guy, it was fun, and I knew that was it wasn't sustainable.
Okay.
You know, unless you're U2 and you're flying around in jets.
Yeah, right on.
So, but I knew I needed to be in music in some way.
Okay.
So making records was how I thought we could do it, and I did The first kind of big or notable record was, you remember Glenn Pavone? You remember?
Of course. Cyclones, right?
Did his second record and third record, and that was probably the first notable thing I did.
Late 90s?
I think
early
so.
2000s?
Maybe earlier than that. I think that was the first one.
Mid-90s.
This is going to be like an episode of Fargo where the story is pretty true, but the dates and the people I'm going to screw.
That's quite all right, my friend. That's quite all right.
He did 2 records with him, and then that got me another 4 or 5 records. And then out of there was a couple that got attention. And that's kind of how it's been for me for...
So referrals then, obviously.
Yeah, and people hear that record. I want to work with that dude. And then the thing I did get into early on was working with PBS.
Right.
So that's kind of another niche of what
let's talk about that now.
Right on.
You just did something with my friend Frizzy.
It's cool that you guys know each other.
Oh, absolutely. Frizzy did this show.
Fantastic. Just met him. Super dude.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
So what happened was, while the studio was in its early form, a good friend, the director of engineering over there, Paul Byers, came to me. They had just recorded their first doo-wop show.
Okay.
So this would have been their first one. I did not record. It was at the Benham or Heinz Hall.
Oh, yeah. My folks would go to those on a regular basis.
Right on. So those were done initially in-house at QED. And they were having some issues with the tape machines. And Paul came over and said, hey, man, you've got these D88s. We're having a sync issue or something. Can you help?
Oh, right on.
I said, absolutely, man. Paul's a good dude. I helped him out. And then he said to me like a week later, he said, yeah, you got a studio. Do you want to mix this thing? So there it was. So I said yes to helping him out with the tape machines. And 20 years later, now the shows...
All those legends.
The shows have changed a little bit where the guy that owns the show is a guy named TJ Lubinsky. He was kind of the mastermind even when he had worked, when he was an employee for QED. Mm-hmm. These were kind of his brainchild. Mm-hmm. And then he went out on his own after maybe...
Were they connected to the Roots of Rock and Roll series? It was
Kind of. A guy named Henry DeLuca, who was the producer of those shows. Yep. Henry was a partner and a producer with TJ, and Henry would handle all of the artist relations stuff and getting this band in and airplane tickets and hotel rooms, where TJ was more big picture music. He was more like a movie producer.
Got it.
And where Henry was more of the guy getting the actors to the set and making sure everybody was happy. Something he was fantastic, and I don't know how he does that. And my job on these shows has gone from being a guy just basically recording and mixing to now we've done these 20 years, and I think it's the biggest moneymaker on PBS, bigger than Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers.
I can imagine.
But
especially
now,
in this town,
we treat them like recording sessions. So we do pre-production before we go to the live venue. We work with the artist to find the right keys, the right tempos. And TJ, again, the brainchild, his only real marching orders are make it sound like the record.
Got it.
So we're doing a Phil Spector, we're doing, is it, rosewood castanets or the ebony castanet? He wants that kind of detail. So
that's magic. That's magic.
It's great. It took me a long while. It took me about 3 or 4 years of doing the shows. I wanted to make everything big and shiny and, like a giant record of, a big Steven Spielberg movie. I wanted to make it that way. He said, no, man, we want to make it like the record. So it took me a while to kind of get into his way of thinking. And again,
got it.
He was right all along. And now if there's a distorted guitar in the left channel on the original record, we've got a distorted guitar in the left channel on the record. Yeah.
Got it. Did you get a chance to work at all or know Porky before he passed?
Met him a couple times, but he might have been on some of those shows as like an MC.
Later in his
no
life.
Direct working with him, but what a legend though, man.
Yeah, because he was, I think the Roots of Rock and Roll, he was when he was in better health, he was very much instrumental there.
Those were Henry's shows that he, I think, did once or twice a year.
These were the doo-wop shows.
Yeah. Now, the thing with TJ and these, it started out as the American soundtrack when it was under QED, and then his brand was called My Music.
Right,
and it started as doo-wop, but we've done shows that were like 60s rock from England, and we've done
Davy Jones.
All that kind of stuff.
Del Shannon.
Roger McGuinn, all these different eras.
Yep.
If it happened from the late 50s to maybe the early 80s, we've done them. We've done shows in Nashville.
Well, that's what the oldies is now, unfortunately, 60s and 70s.
But very, very, very fortunate to be working on those shows. as a commercial thing, it's kept, it's income,
Oh, certainly.
Keeping a recording studio open is not hard.
And plus you love it.
Dude, I get to put these people, some of them not been on stage in, 20, 30 years. I got, letters from Benny King.
Oh, dude.
Saying,
I got the list here.
This is the best I've ever sounded. Thank you.
The list is ridiculous.
I mean, it's just...
the list is ridiculous. I'm just like looking at this going, I mean, really?
Yeah. It's been an honor. And Ronnie Spector, we just did her a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
And when she says this was the best recording experience I've ever had, it just... And to put them in a light, a good, positive light forever for their grandchildren to see. This is something you're leaving behind. I never lose focus on it, whether it's Benny King or whether it's Blasey and the Clarks or whether it's John and the Werewolf guys. Everything I do out of that studio, this is going to be here long after I'm gone.
So is this help me understand how PBS and our local PBS affiliate work in conjunction. This is a PBS production. It just happens to be filmed in Pittsburgh? They're
filmed all over the world, literally. These ones I do with TJ are filmed all over the world. Italy, England, we've done them in California, Vegas. We've done them all over. And don't quote me on this, but the way I understand the way PBS works is that there's somebody that creates a show and then they syndicate it or rent it or buy it. I think that's how it works.
Got it.
My job is just to make it sound great. I don't get involved in the business end of it. But they're all over the country, all over the world, actually. These shows have been re-syndicated. I think it's like anything else. Once it runs its contract or term, then it reverts back to the owner and they can repurpose it for other things.
So is most of this work that you're doing in your studio, or are you on location as well too?
Both. We did a show with Engelbert Humperdinck over in Hawaii.
Yeah, right on. How can you argue that travel, right?
So we did. We pre-recorded some things because we were heading into a hurricane. It was and we didn't know what we were going to be able to do with strings because these records are lush. They got all the strings and horns.
Absolutely.
And again, it's not some dude on a keyboard. He wants a 50-piece string section.
Got it.
So I got to do a 50-piece string section. So we use predominantly Pittsburgh musicians. So we pre-track some of the stuff. We flew in, and this is pretty true with most of them. We flew into the location and we tape a live concert.
Got it.
And then we kind of weld the two together. So it's the best of him being him or her being her in front of an audience, but with a 50-piece string orchestra recorded with vintage microphones that I would have used in 1973 if I was there.
Yeah.
So it's all period correct stuff.
Yeah, that's authentic. Yeah, for sure. I think we were talking about my uncle Terry Bates from Corbin Hanner.
Drummer guy, right?
Yeah. I think he had been on a lot of the Roots rock and roll shows over there because they were a session guy in Pittsburgh with some of these bands were so fond of his playing that they would keep bringing him back in.
I could see that, yeah.
But the doo-wop thing became another favorite of my parents, and that came later, right? The doo-wop series came years after the Roots of rock and roll had established itself pretty well in Pittsburgh.
I think so. Again, Henry's Roots shows have been going on forever.
They were exclusively Pittsburgh there, right?
100%. That was always at the Bannerman or Heinz Hall or something like that. That was all, and I think it was always
PBS would grab that and send that nationally, right?
No. These are two different shows.
Got it.
Henry's the connection between the two is Henry. The Roots of Rock and Roll show was 100% Henry.
Okay.
But I think TJ saw what Henry did.
Got it.
The infrastructure and the organization and how he managed that. And so basically we used everything Henry was good at, and TJ had the music big picture.
Got it.
Yeah. And that's been going on for, again, 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me talk to you about music genres. We'll take a little bit of a right turn. You're going to be a great guy to talk about this because you have such a wide palette. You work with a kaleidoscope of artists. So you cross music genres constantly in your work.
Right on.
I'm of the belief that the record buying public has pretty much been dictated to as to what they are supposed to be liking in terms of genres, and that kind of is changing. I think people are generally just liking what they dig or digging what they dig now. But you were playing with like top 40. You're playing hard rock. Yeah. You're playing hair metal. Right. You're probably playing some heavier stuff. Yeah. And at that time, it was just a paying gig for you. Right. But you also are being exposed to so much. What is your thoughts on how genres are looked at by the public today as opposed to, let's say, 1989? Wow. Are there differences? Are we still being spoon-fed, do you believe? Or are they just not as rigid as they used to be?
Man, like we said about, when I was traveling where there was no pre-internet and everybody had their own little pocket, like the way Seattle kind of became its thing because it was its own little world and it wasn't being impacted by what was happening in Los Angeles or what was happening in any other major market. I don't think we have that anymore. For better or worse, we're a smaller world now because of the internet. And what, somebody's digging in Tokyo, a kid in Crafton is checking out. So that's cool.
Okay.
But again, it kind of, I don't think there's no more Galapagos Island where things are going to, evolve at their own rate. Everything's kind of cross-pollinated, for better or worse. So the genre thing, that's a tough call, man. I think kids like what they like, and I think there is a lot of, you hear hip-hop records with our buddy Frizzy yesterday.
Yeah.
Like 80s, like saturated guitar solo in it.
Exactly right.
So there's a lot of that intermingling.
A lot of crossover.
Yeah, which I think is cool.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection of buying music and digging music as a kid and in my 20s and 30s was that the record companies would dictate, this is grunge, this is a new thing, this is black metal, this is hair metal, this is heavy metal, this is pop music, this is hip hop, and that came around, right? This is R&B. And
so you're asking, is that happening now, that kind of thing?
Are they still trying to do that? Because there's no record stores to tell anymore, because we could do that when we go into a record store. It depends on what rack you're looking at. Yeah,
it's the Wild West right now, man. It's hard. I'm so in the cave making records. I don't know even how they're marketing, these guys. The bands I'm working with are educating me about the Spotify list, and you got to pay for these ones and not pay for this one, and this is a real one and this is a fake one. For better or worse, the internet has leveled the playing field. So everybody has the same at-bat ability, where in the 70s and 80s, you were with this major, that major, or this major, or your stuff never got
very lucky.
Yeah. Now everybody has the ability to get that audience, but the problem is everybody's trying for that audience. So the signal to noise ratio, there's a lot of noise. Back then, for better or worse, if you bought a record, there was enough investment in it from a major label that it was going to be a quality product.
Okay.
You may not.
Really?
Well, again, you may have accidentally bought a Air Supply record, but it was a good Air Supply record. You might have ordered the wrong.
You're looking at it from the standpoint of a producer, right?
but my point is, whatever you would have bought, like ordering off a menu, if you order the wrong thing on the menu and you just don't like it.
Like Little River Band, if you bought it, it was going to be a polished, put together. I might not like it.
That's my point.
But it sounds good.
Nowadays, I think it's.
You don't know what you're
the
getting.
Quality level, again, because everybody can buy a laptop, everybody can put a YouTube thing up, which again has democratized things a bit, but getting to the good shit is harder than ever.
I can still tell, man. I think I have a discerning enough ear.
No. Once you hear it, you can tell if it's good. But how do I get to that thing back there when I type into YouTube female artist, singer-songwriter?
Inundated.
Blam.
Yeah.
How do I get to a good one? Because I got it. Nope. Okay, that's cool. Nope. So that's signal to noise ratio, because everybody can be on the radio now. Everybody can make a record now, which is cool.
Right.
But, I can hit the lottery tomorrow.
Right.
I can buy an airplane. You don't want me driving the airplane.
Got it.
Don't want that to happen.
Good analogy.
Good analogy. So it's always great singer or great presenter and great song. That's, if you look at any song throughout history that has resonated with people, it could be Steve Perry or Bruce Dickinson or Whitney Houston, or it could be David Lee Roth or Tom Waits. It's got to be a compelling person, order, and it's got to be a great travel, a great 4-minute, 3-minute trip.
Okay.
That you can break that down to any song, any pop song, and you'll find that there's somebody telling the story that either has a great voice or a compelling voice, and that the story, either lyrically and or musically, is something that is so compelling you can't turn it off. That to me is always the measuring stick.
Well, that's a formula. All right.
Well, it is and it isn't. It's like cooking, you know when something needs more salt. You know when this is not right, or it needs sugar or whatever. Mm-hmm. Same thing with working a song. You know if the intro, at least I do, I know if the intro is too long. I know if the key is too high for the singer. I know if the tempo is too fast and it's chasing the singer. Those things are hard to nail, but when you do, and again, you make it compelling enough, I'm lucky. I'm really lucky. The people that I work with, John, Scott, Jay Wiley, a new girl I'm working with, Lindsay Libro, great voices, great world-class voices. And then making the song support them is my job. And I think back to the girl trying to find the YouTube girl, if you find somebody with an undeniable voice, a compelling voice and a cool story and a cool travel, a 3-minute travel, that's what makes music that people want to listen to. Could be quiet. It could be Elton John whispering it. It could be Mr. Lydon screaming it.
Yeah.
But it has to be something where I dare you to change the channel. It has to be that good. And that's what I'm searching for.
Yeah, and that's such an intangible. You know it when you hear it.
I think so.
It's just, you just don't know where it's going to ultimately come from. It can come from a variety of sources, right? And
that's, I think, part of my job security is because I've been an artist, a guy that wrote songs, and now as a producer, I'm kind of like the lifeguard or the coach. When these guys bring the songs in, I'm a guy hopefully they trust, that currently has no, when I hear 10 songs, I don't know who wrote them or who's married to them or what the personal connections are.
Okay.
So I can look at them very dispassionately and say, good, needs a bridge, chorus is okay, wrong key. And then again, hopefully we've gained trust where they listen to me. And sometimes we'll argue, where I think this is a better chorus and they think this is the better chorus. And we work it out. Typically, like I said, it's in a room. This year it's been via Zoom, which makes it a bit more difficult. But that's kind of the process. That's what I do. And I hope to bring to bands that I work with, where you come in with something that you like, but you would like it to be better, leaner, better. Okay. Or something with most of the bands I work with where it's a verse and a chorus. Okay. Or we need a bridge, or we have a verse and bridge and no chorus. And then I get involved in a compositional way. Right. So producing is kind of like, hey, try another key. Hey, tempo's a little fast. Directing the movie. That's producing. Yes. When you see a producer, that's what a producer does. A producer takes a song, turns it into a record. Okay. A director takes a story or a screenplay, turns it into a movie. Okay. So when you hear engineering, that's more about the cameraman. That's the cinematographer. Okay. He's taking the pictures. An engineer is recording that drum the way it should sound with the band's and the producer's vision. And I'm doing both those jobs currently on most of those records. Now, when you get involved as a songwriter, which I have on a lot of the records recently, it's when these guys need help writing a chorus or need help writing lyrics or need help writing a melody, where I can say we need to do this and we agree that it needs to be done, but if they're at the end of their rope and they can't do it, then I'll come in and say, how about this? How about this? How about that? And like the Gene stuff and the Hawkeye stuff and a few of the old Clark songs, I was involved in that way. So that's more, if you want to stay with the movie analogy, that's screenwriter. And I guess some directors, your Scorsese's and your, who's the guy, the Pulp Fiction guy, they get involved in writing scripts as well. So the movie corollary is pretty easy one to follow if you're not a fan or knowledgeable with the way records are made. Screenplay to movie, song to record. Okay. And the producer is kind of the director, and the producer in a movie situation is more like the record label. They're the people funding it. Got it. Now it's a lot of the bands funding their own records. Yeah, of course. When you see executive producer, what does that mean in terms of the credits? Probably some dude that wrote the check. I did. Luckily, I don't deal with much of that. Most of the bands I work with are self-funded. They're independent artists. Yeah, right on. Right on. And so they act as artist and A&R or record label. Yeah. And typically there's a point person, there's a business guy, and then typically there's a creative guy. I'm sure. But that's kind of how it works.
So you've seen how that whole industry has evolved, okay? And I'm sure you have some opinions on the the evolution of downloading in 99, 2000.
Right.
You remember when record companies would indeed front money or help the touring expenses and so forth, or give advances, for God's sake. That was an advance, was a thing that actually happened back then, right? And then downloading changed all that. Right. So what's your recollection of seeing that change? Where were you in terms of your producing career when that happened?
Right in the middle of it, for better or worse, my footprint of my studio, I don't have some giant Kmart size place. I'm just big enough to record a string section, horn section, band, the guys in New York City and in Los Angeles, were studios that were charging, $2,500 a day.
Right.
Never that guy. So when those big record budgets went away due to the lost revenue with the download situation, those big giant studios were the first ones to get hit. I was kind of because they were counting on
like SIR, Electric Lady, SIR.
Some of those places are still around, but places like the Power Station, it was bought and sold a few times.
Okay.
Now it's Berkeley School of Music owns it.
Okay. So they all struggled then.
Yeah, I mean, we all do. I do a lot of mentoring with young folks that want to get into the business.
Right.
Don't get into it, make money. I've been lucky, and I've supportive wife at home, and my business is like one of those deep sea fisher guys you see, like
it's a feast or famine.
Yeah, some years, we killed it. Some years, like, or the guy digging for oil or something. Some years you strike it, and if you're smart with your money and you got a good home life and a supportive wife,
right.
The high times, hopefully everything evens out.
Yeah, of course.
But there's easier things to do. Don't get into make a lot of money. Get into it because you have to get into it. I mean, this is all I know. I don't know how cars work. I don't know why the sun shines. I don't know any of that stuff. But I think I've got to be pretty good at working a band and putting them on record and getting and exceeding what they wanted. Okay. Like if they came in expecting this, I think most of them will say they left with that. That's my goal.
Got it.
And remembering even with young bands, remembering my first time walking in the studio, and I'm there every day, so I can be a little jaded with it, but I always have to recalibrate myself and remember the first time I walked in, like with the young lady, Lindsay, she won the WYEP singer-songwriter competition that I sponsored last year.
Got it.
And we've been working on songs together, really talented, really fruitful, like sends me 3 songs a night, like really a girl that she loves it. But remembering to stay in the moment when she walks in that studio, to remember how excited I was the first time I walked in that studio. Because I can be very focused and I can be very businesslike, so I have to check myself and remind myself that this is these people's passion. And with other people like the Clarks and the Jeans and the Hawkeyes and those people, they're coming at me with a bag of money. So I take that. That's like me borrowing your car, man.
Understood.
Your brand new car.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I don't want to return it with a scratch.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it polished, full tank of gas.
Yeah.
Here you go. Give you what you expected.
Yeah. Did you see the downloading coming? Because obviously you were working in a digital environment. I'm guessing when Pro Tools reared its ugly head in the late 90s, mid 90s, the first generation of that. Is that right?
Yeah.
There was something before Pro Tools, wasn't there?
There's something called DigiDesign was the parent company. There's something called Sound Tools
Sound Tools, maybe.
Or Audio Media. There was like a 2-channel version of it.
Did you see the potential for digital downloading? No. You didn't see it at all?
No, I'm not that smart, man. No.
Okay.
No,
I wonder about producers or engineers. Did they ever see that coming?
No, I don't even know. The record label, they didn't see it coming because they got caught behind.
They got caught bad.
I mean, the history with the CD, they were basically, it cost nothing to make a CD.
Right.
And that's why they made all the money they made and why the recording studios it was in that time period, in that, whatever it was, that 83 to 95, 98.
98, yeah, 98.
They were printing money because it cost nothing to make a CD. There wasn't breakage issues, so record companies were just crushing. But they never really saw or the people that knew didn't say anything about the streaming. They didn't see that coming.
Yeah,
and it's hard, man. I mean, it angers me when I see people downloading things and pirating things.
It always did for me too.
I mean, it's this guy is working 3 jobs to come to me to make a record. And he makes money, blah 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 blah. You have no idea. These dudes are painting houses, and I mean, guys you've seen on MTV are working at Guitar Center or painting houses or digging ditches.
Yeah, the consumer by now should understand what the hell they're doing. They've been explained a billion times about how it's pure theft. It just doesn't seem
I think
to
it's
stop.
one of those, they view it as a victimless crime because they wouldn't walk into your house and steal a CD off of your table.
Right.
But because you're not there and it's on the web and I don't know and it's a thing, it's a number, then they view it as a victimless crime. The other thing to remember that a lot of people don't know is when the record labels started losing money due to the downloads, the one avenue that bands could make money were T-shirt sales and merch and all that stuff.
Touring, which is all flipped upside down. They would tour to support the records. Now the records are throwaways. They're touring to make money.
And the record label, I mean, even back when you were making money, the chances of you recouping, I mean, look at the math. I don't want to bore people with that. But, you really have to sell it. I mean, you have to be Bon Jovi or Bruce Springsteen or Madonna to really recoup. If not, it's just like a credit card that you can't get out of. You can't get out from underneath of it.
Yeah.
But now fast forward to when the streaming came about, record companies are smart. Say, okay, we're not selling CDs. We're getting our asses handed to us from the streaming. Where can we make? Bands are making money with T-shirts, so now they sign bands to these 360 deals, which basically means we're sharing in all your profits.
We own you.
McDonald's commercial, I'm taking a bit of that. Lunchbox, I'm taking a bit of that. Concert T-shirts, I'm taking a bit of that. So
concert prices spiked because of this, right?
Yeah, from what I understand. I mean, my knowledge is very narrow with that because again, I'm not in that world.
Yeah.
I'm in the cave making the record. But I do know bands complaining about it. And the indies, like the Clarks, who were on a major for a minute, they're smart people, good people, and they've made this, whatever it's been now, 25 years, 28, whatever it's been.
28, 30.
But they were, in a sense, like me, where if they were giant band and they had this crazy credit card debt that they couldn't get out from under, they'd probably be painting houses and digging ditches.
Right.
Like me, if I had the giant Kmart studio, like the guy in L.A. or New York,
all that overhead,
I couldn't get out from under it. So I was just big enough to do all the work I've done for 20 years, but not too big that when shit hit the fan, I would still be able to kind of hang in there. Yeah.
It's amazing what I'm seeing too. The revenue, and I don't have a lot of information, but from what I've been told, the revenue on streaming is so minuscule. It's almost.
Dude, I should have brought my royalty statement with you.
It's laughable. Almost,
it's like 0.00000, and YouTube I think is the worst, but it's silly. Radio airplay still plays a little bit. We've been lucky that we've written some songs that have been on the air.
Yeah.
That pays a little bit, but dude, bands are making money touring. That's it, and now they can't tour.
Right.
So trying to monetize the live stream, I feel for them. I really do. It's hard, and then that affects me.
Certainly.
Luckily I have the PBS thing, which has been sidelined a little bit.
Right.
I also have another part of the business, which is like consulting, and I do a lot of. You go and buy a Pro Tools rig, and you're having trouble either technically getting it happening.
Yeah.
And we do a screen share, and I go, bing, 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 bing. I'm like your IT dude.
Yeah, right on.
And I can help you with the Pro Tools. I can't do anything else but Pro Tools, but that I'm pretty strong in. And then with some clients, I have we get deeper, big picture things like they'll send me a mix, or I'll look at their session and why doesn't my bass drum sound good, or is this too much reverb? So I can get in and do the screen share, and so basically like producing, like coaching, like swing coach. Tiger Woods has a swing coach,
right?
So I look at your session, or look at your mix, and we critique it. So that part of the business has been good, but actually the making the records, aside from the Gene thing that we did, that's now on the radio. And the song with Lindsay, the singer-songwriter winner, I've not done a lot of mixing with people sending me tracks via the internet. Two guys from Nashville, a guy from Spain, and I've been mixing things, but that's unattended. But in making full-on records, the Gene and the Lindsay thing were the only two things I've done in the last year, man.
That has to be COVID related there, right?
Oh, yeah.
It has to be the pandemic.
Because those dudes aren't out playing shows to make money. They want to get in. I talked to Jay from the Hawkeyes hourly.
Of course.
But those dudes had a tour lined up that got canceled.
Yeah.
So if they can't play to make the money, they can't come to me and make the record.
So it looked like we're getting back to normal here for tours,
so.
hopefully at least by 2022, I'm hoping, right?
That's what I'm hearing. Those guys are starting to book some dates. I'm hearing like the Clark's guys have released some dates.
Yeah.
So people get smart, with the vaccine, get out there, get
right.
shot up, man. Be smart when you're in a group of people.
Absolutely.
It's being considerate and being smart. And let's just get back to normal.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, why do we don't want to? I mean, my God, that should be goal number one for everybody.
Dude, 100%.
Talk about mentors for you. We talked about Toby Wright a little bit off, but when you were starting to take this avenue, producing and engineering, who did you look up to?
Well, listening to records again, I think, and starting to read liner notes and
go back a ways and tell me who you like. Go back to the Stones, Zeppelin, Rush, those eras.
Like Stevie Wonder records, Elton John records, those pop records. Just again, great songs and great, compelling vocal performances. And then rock records, the Kisses and the Zeppelins and the Procol Harums and the Beatles. Just loving songs and just being a kid. Wanting to do that, man.
You wanted to know who was engineering this stuff.
I want to know everything about it.
Right on.
And then as you fast forward 10, 15 years, when I started getting in serious bands and was in a rock band, Toby came in and did a single for us.
Okay.
And then maybe a year later came in and did a full length right down the street, which is Deja Vu.
Mulberry Street Studios, right.
So watching him work, and that was right about the time when I was transitioning out of the playing and wanting to start to accumulate gear. So he was invaluable. I said, dude, I got some money. What do I want to buy? He said, buy one of these, one of those, two of these. And I still got that shit today.
Right on.
Bought this Neve, this Telefunken, this da-da-da-da. And so he was instrumental in buying the right shit.
Got it.
And just watching him work. I talk to him, email him, once a month. We keep in touch. And another guy, Jack Gauthier up in Rhode Island, who's really popular at doing blues records. But we did a rock record up there and learned a lot from him. So any studio experience I ever had, I tried to absorb. Now it's cool with YouTube and the videos and all of those. I mean, it's amazing. You can go down the rabbit hole and see how they made Eddie Kramer's going to talk about Kiss Alive, and you pick a record.
Terry Brown, all the early Rush stuff.
There's a dude talking about it, so that's amazing. But being there, I think the biggest thing I learned from Toby and Jack as a drummer, young drummer, thinking I was okay, nervous, was the psychology behind it. Because that's musicians are fragile, crazy people. We all are. We want to be right. We want to be good. We want to be accepted, So knowing how to deal with that person on that side of the microphones, I learned a lot from Toby. I learned a lot from Jack. That's why when you come over and visit the space, for two of the reasons, I've never put up a glass wall in my studio. Typically, when you see a typical studio, there's a control room with glass, and there's reasons for that. Some of them not so important nowadays to keep the sound from the control room to get on the microphones.
It's more about privacy, then.
Yeah, and but it's definitely a vibe breaker. Again,
I would think.
As a young drummer, I pour my heart out on this take. Stop. And I can kind of see people through the glass, and is it good, is it bad? Nobody's talking. They're kind of talking to themselves. They're not talking to me. It's a horrible experience, man. It's a horrible experience. So when I put the studio together, one of the things I always wanted to do was take all my good experiences making records and horrible experiences making records and play upon that, like headphone mixes.
Right on.
I won't mention the name, but I was in a really expensive studio as an artist. I mean, really expensive, high-end, 5-piece band, and we had 2 headphone mixes.
What?
I'm like, are you shitting me? So I've got to share, playing with headphones in a studio, unless you're a studio musician, is an unnatural thing. You're not used to doing it.
Absolutely
used to being
not.
on stage
Absolutely
or
not.
in your game room or rehearsal hall.
Yep.
So you got to make it as comfortable as possible. That was the first thing I did. We have like 6 stereo headphone mixes.
Yep.
Everybody gets their own mix, exactly what you want. The wall thing. So when we're doing cuts, I'm just talking to you, man.
Yeah.
I put headphones on when we're tracking.
Yeah, right. Of course.
Dude, that was great. Killer. Let's try that again. There's no none of that
I think
stuff.
that privacy thing is it's there's a When you say it's more about a delineation, we're over here and you're
It probably
over there.
started that way, and there are technical reasons when the control room,
isolation chambers, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
there was
I
reasons
get
for
all
that. But nowadays, there's workarounds, dude. There's no need to do it.
I would think.
At least me, I've gotten used to it being in this space for 20 years. Nobody's ever complained.
Yeah.
I've had crazy loud drummers in there. Just wear headphones, track it. Yeah, no problem. But the communication and the vibe, I've got some of the best gear you can buy in the world in a comfortable, like your game room. I try to make it the best sounding game room there is, with the best gear there is, and we make a record. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the digital technology evolution. As a guitar player, we mentioned again off camera a little bit. I started playing, taking it serious around '95, I guess. I think there was some digital stomp boxes that were coming out of the '80s that were just really, and there's some of them are still like the Boss pedals. They're still like a thing, but the Metal Zone and just some harsh stuff. So whether it was transistor, whether it was analog or early digital, it just sounded to me like garbage. It was tinny. And even moving into the early 2000s, there was the pod. There was things, and guitarists that will hear this, they know. That early digital stuff does not sound like the digital stuff today. No,
it's the same thing with, iPhones and computers. I mean, the power you have in this phone, it would have been, a $20,000 computer in 1990, whatever.
Right.
It's definitely come a long way, and
Are you an analog snob?
Had it all. Had the 2-inch 16-track 3M. I mean, the one that, like, they made Van Halen records on. That machine, like the beefiest, analog machine.
Full of hiss.
Had the big analog console. But it just got to be, I use this analogy all the time, it got to be like, it's cool to have the 57 Chevy to drive around South Park on Sunday. But mission critical drive from here to California, you're not going to drive the 57 Chevy,
right? And
it's signal processing, and there's some romanticizing about we're doing this. Now I do have crazy old German microphones. I don't think there's a replacement for that.
Difference there? So the ribbon mics and all that stuff. There's something to that stuff.
There's still something. It's a thing. It's a filter. Going back to the film analogy, it's a camera. Some dudes still shoot on film or whatever,
Okay.
So there is something, at least to my palate, my aesthetic, I've not found, because there's digital microphones that emulate this and emulate that.
Yeah.
For me, I've not heard one that does that. But ultimately, dude, here's you'll love this one. Your analogy guy, we were talking earlier. You do not go to a restaurant for the stove. You go for the plate of food. So I don't care if it's a laptop or a $200,000 recording console. If it's good, it is good. And I found out over my 20 years of what I needed. I had the analog multi-track. I had the analog 2-track, the analog console. Now I just have the old school mics, some of the old school front end preamps and compressors. But the capture device, to me, there's no reason to record analog. There is zero reason to record analog. And there's guys, Robbie Robertson has one of the most famous Neve consoles ever, sold it. I mean, these people are just getting rid of these things because they just understand that there's just no need for it anymore. I mean, there's a cool thing about getting in the 57 Chevy.
Well, they romanticize about it, right? It's a past era,
right,
coming back.
And when a 16-year-old girl comes in the studio, I put up the Whitney Houston $30,000 microphone, and that's super cool.
Is it Newman?
Yeah, it's an old German. Yeah, and I put in the $200 microphone, and sometimes we use the $200 microphone. So there is something about that. We're picking up a fresh guitar. A cool guitar that motivates you, singing in the Whitney Houston microphone. It's intangible. I'm down with that. But with me, I'm the guy that's going to be working on the console. I don't need that motivation. I could see maybe if you're trying to get your studio off the ground, you buy some cool things. But again, it's about the plate of food. It's not about the stove.
Okay. And now for guitar tones, for guitarists out there too, which was more my bent, I haven't bought a digital effect piece of equipment in quite a while. but I've heard some that are just, the Kemper is one of them. Just like it's just like, holy shit. The oversampling rate, the quality of the technology has caught up.
Right. It's like, back to the movie thing, it's like those dudes are now shooting all digital that 10 years ago they wouldn't do. The real sticklers say that it doesn't look that, it doesn't look like film. Now they've gotten the technology with the cameras and the guitar stuff. The Kemper, I use that. I mean, I still have my old amps, but I've what they call it profiling, which is basically you get your guitar sound the way you like it. Your guitar, your settings on your Marshall, the mic in the position you want it, the cable that you want, the preamp that you want, coming out the speakers the way you want. That's my sound. And basically, you jam this Kemper in that signal path, in the plumbing, and it basically plays the amp. It sends tones and volumes, things through it, and it plays it through and captures it. Right. So it basically knows now what the tubes and the power section and that tone circuit and what the microphone and the cable and everything's doing, and it body snatches it, like the Invasion of the Body Snatcher. It clones your thing. So if I want J&P Marshall, gain at 3, gain at 8, gain at 10. And it's super cool because my whole thing is I want to get to the music. I don't want to. I'm kind of a gear nerd, but not when this dude's sitting here and wants to cut guitars. Let's Marshall, bling. Here we go. Let's do it.
You want the song and the structure of the song.
Yeah, man. We can nerd out later and fool around and talk about EL34s. We can do
all in post, right?
Yeah, man. But let's make music. We're here to get the song the way you want it. So it's just another tool. I still use amps sometimes. But when I'm banging out guitar tracks and we're on now smaller recording budgets, we got to work quickly. The Gene record, perfect example. Again, I sent these guys home with my guitars. They sent me back a Pro Tools session with just basically what would be the cable coming out of the guitar, the direct guitar. I ran that back through the Kemper that we've used for 4 or 5 records.
Right.
It's as if those dudes played it. So it's pretty amazing.
I get it. Yeah, I had Tony McAlpine. Tony came down and did the podcast here, my 30th show. He happened to be in town, agreed to do it, stayed for 4 hours.
Wow.
Amazing. It was like I was pinching myself that he was here. What I was fascinated was, here is a very accomplished guitarist, a veteran of the business, no appreciation whatsoever for any kind of analog gear whatsoever. The only guitars he owned to his name were the most recent Ibanez guitars, which his endorsement deal gave him, and the stage guitars that he uses. Nothing analog appealed to him. Nothing old school vintage appealed to him at all. He really was about what he can create and the best tools available to create it.
Yeah, man.
And I thought that was so unique to hear, though.
Oh, it is. It is. The Kemper thing. I mean, guys like Mark Knopfler. These aren't just all metal dudes that, you think. But Mark Knopfler, those kind of guys. I mean, tube amps, they can be temperamental. The power isn't right.
Are they going away?
No. They'll never go away. It's like a classic car. I mean, there's something cool about standing in front of that Marshall in that 412 and just blam. There's something super cool about that.
Yeah. I know, but an open 8 will crack your ribs.
But there is something cool about, again, concert business being down, where bands are doing less full-on touring. They're doing fly dates. Yeah. I can fly with a memory stick, have a rental Kemper in Topeka, put that in, load up my thing. There's my sounds from the record.
It's a cost and aggravation issue, right?
100%. I just see about 70% of the bands I've done records with that have used the Kemper have gone and bought them.
Okay.
That and a bridge that I use that I've been on board with from the prototype, something called Evertune. You're a guitar guy. You down with that?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm a tuning nut about intonation.
Oh, yeah.
And years ago, always had trouble, and you can ask anybody that's made a record with me, stop, check your tuning, dude, check your tuning, dude, check your tuning.
It's corrective tuning for the Paul.
Yeah, I'll give you the download.
That's all Les Paul with it on.
Yeah. So I reached out to a buddy, Andrew Murdoch. He goes by the name of Mud Rock. He does all these heavy, heavy records out west. Did the big Godsmack record. Yeah. But they're tuning like B and A. I mean, crazy low tuning, which you just can't keep guitars in. I was like, dude, how are you doing this? He goes, well, use heavy string gauge, tune often. And I said, yeah, dude, I know that. He goes, But there is a new thing. I'm like, okay, well, you know. So I think it was what company? It wasn't. ESP. He was partners with the ESP guys.
Okay.
They were one of the first adopters. This thing called Evertune. So what it is, it's no motors or not like the Gibson thing. It's basically 200-year-old technology. It's springs and levers. That's all it is. So what it does is, let's say an E, let's say that's 3 pounds.
Yeah.
So you tune up to E, and you can set it to bend and vibrato. But if you are a bad guitar player like me and you pull things sharp or you over fret and things go sharp, it knows it is now, instead of 2 pounds, it is now 2 pound 1 ounce.
Yeah.
It lets off 1 ounce.
That's awesome.
It is
very forgiving.
Dude, that again is something anybody that's made a record with me has either bought one of those or asked to borrow my guitars for different gigs.
And it's just a standard bridge replacement.
Yeah. Now
like
you do
Tone Pro is the bridge I'm most familiar with. We use them on all of our guitars. That was a manufacturer out in California.
Think of this as like kind of like a Floyd, where you do have to cut into the guitar. It's a little.
Yeah, I think I've
module.
seen it. I think I've seen it. Okay.
But each string's on its own little spring and lever.
Yeah.
And dude, it is for things like capoing. Typically, when you put a capo on a guitar, you have to tune for it. This I can go bing, 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 bing. Back to getting to the music. I don't want to tune a guitar. I know you don't want me to tell you to tune a guitar.
Yeah.
So it is that, the Kemper, things like that. I'm not that precious about it. I just want to get to the music. Now, I do records with people that don't want to do it. Or if we're doing solos. Typically, if I'm cutting a solo, we don't use the Evertune because there's a lot more inflection there.
Nuance.
Yeah, and it's a guitar you're familiar with.
Got it.
Maybe you're not familiar with mine.
And you're okay if it rubs a little bit.
I don't. It's just about the song.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier.
Yeah.
If it's a 3-minute, 40-second fun travel, sad travel, angry travel, whatever our goal for that 3 minutes is, if we get there, I don't care what we use.
Got it.
I just want it to be great. I want you to be over the moon with, I cannot believe that song ended up that way.
Okay.
That's my goal.
Do you have any favorite pedals that although it's not a priority to you anymore, anything that you remember that you really like?
Yeah, one that I got turned on to, my brother again, Kev, out at Main Street. He's been my guitar Sherpa for as long as I've been doing this.
Right on.
Years ago, when I first started doing the records, and his band Grapevine was one of the bigger records I did that was on the radio. And people came to town and all the 9 yards. He had this thing called the Experience pedal.
Okay.
I was like the drummer that bought the China cymbal, and I was just, I was using this Experience pedal on everything. I used it on. It is like kind of like a fuzz face.
Okay.
So it's got this saturation thing, but also has an octave. It is the coolest pedal. I'll send you some links of things you can check it out.
Okay.
So that's my favorite pedal, and it's on the Gene record. And I'm a lot more judicious. I'm not just putting on every track of every.
I get it.
But that pedal, definitely check those out. It's the Prescription Electronics, the Experience pedal.
Yeah, there's a lot of boutique pedals out there now, and it's just, there's more pedals than I have time to even begin to noodle with.
The other one that I've used a lot is Digitech, their fuzz pedal called the Carcosa. It's a super cool fuzz pedal.
Digitech?
Yeah.
They've come a long way?
Dude, they make these, I don't know where they snatched this dude from. But
their early stuff was... Oof.
No, the last 5-8 years, they've got some ninja making these pedals.
Okay.
That amazing.
Okay.
Amazing.
It's all digital pedal.
No, well, I don't know. Whatever would
Transistors. There's no tube in there. Right?
No. I think it's more of a throwback to like an MXR, like the cool coveted tube screamers.
That's a Randy Rhoads thing.
Yeah, but they have probably 6 or 7 different pedals, and their fuzz pedal is super. They've got another one that does nothing but feedback. So you can set like under octave, over octave. So you hit a note.
The pitch transposer.
No, you just hit it, and you step on this pedal, and you hear, ooh, the feedback come up.
Oh, it's the swell.
It'll just stay there. It's amazing. I should know what that's called, but check it out. Digitech feedback pedal. That, the Carcosa, and the Experience pedal I still use, whether I'm using the Kemper or... it was
just so strange to me, how transistors are transistor bad. No, I mean the Ibanez Tube Screamer was magic, and any Les Paul I ever had, even the original 909, the original one was a little sweeter. But even the modern, the T9 was fine too, or the 808. I'm sorry, the original was sweet. The new ones are good, but that was magic, and that was just transistors in there, right? It really is subjective, isn't it?
It's the same thing with studio gear. Like when you think of Neve consoles. I mean, there's Class A, there's Class AB.
They were bloody expensive,
They still are, but the point is everyone, thinks, Class A is, you can only have Class A, but they don't realize some of the most sought after stuff is Class AB, where it's not an all discrete path, where there is, chips and stuff in there. It comes back to the song.
Yeah. It really doesn't matter. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Remember that Alanis Morissette record back in the 90s?
Yeah.
It was made on, I think, an ADAT or some shitty little recorder, Mackie board.
I think it was a Mackie board. It was like a 16
like
track.
a bazillion, like 7 singles off the record or whatever it was.
Well, I mean, I look at all the classic stuff too. I mean, the Stones' Exile on Main Street was with Stolen Electricity, and I think on a 16 track, it was like or an 8 track. I think I just kept multi, and you look at the brilliance of Page and all that. I do wonder though, when you look back at those engineers and those guitarists known for their production values, what would they be like today? What would Page be like today to record that music then in today's environment? What would that sound like?
Same thing George Martin would be, or the Beatles. I mean, they were stretching the bounds of what was doable then.
Or like Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. Alan Parsons produced that, right?
Yeah, they'd be going crazy. They'd be doing silly shit like we do now, flipping it backwards and distorting it and doing all that. It's unless you're documenting, unless like I've done stuff with like Wynton Marsalis jazz stuff.
Yeah.
And that is different. That is like wildlife photography. I'm not making a movie. I'm just setting up my cameras and waiting for the cheetah to come by.
Got it.
And I take the picture.
Got it.
I get great tones. They're happy. We're not trying to make anything. Now, when they make their records, maybe they do, but for a live thing that I've done with them and artists like that, it's not the experience pedal and running this thing, and it's not a Beatles record. It is an experimentation. It is documentation.
Right. Good point.
I've done some chamber stuff, classical music back in the day. And again, it's just setting your cameras up in the right place, taking a picture of the wallaby, and getting a great, unblurry, killer shot of the wildlife. That's a different thing. But making pop records with the Beatles and Pink Floyd, then we're using the studio like an instrument. We're pushing boundaries. I'll do a thing with guitars. I try to make on the records hyper real.
Okay.
So if you're playing eighth notes on playing it just jump, 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 jump. Okay. So typically a rhythm on a guitar, you might emphasize 1 and 3.
Yeah,
so I might have the guitar player play one pass of it straight, and then one pass of it just going. And then if you put those there and you pan them a little bit, so now is that one guitar? But it's now this 7-foot guy instead of a 5'11" guy.
It's real full, yeah.
But it's still playing the part, but we've kind of deconstructed. So little crazy tricks like that you're not going to do with Wynton Marsalis. You're going to say, hey, can you play the pad and then give me the top? You're not going to do that shit. You're taking a picture of the cheetah.
I get it.
But that's the difference in those records. And the Beatles, those dudes, I guarantee they'd be trying crazy shit.
Are you still miking, like, when you do use like a tube amp, are you still miking it traditionally, finding a sweet spot, like using 58s, using 57s?
Typically 57. If that's the dust cap, my spot is right about there.
Yeah, right on. Right on.
A lot of people use ribbon mics on. I've never got a ribbon to sound good.
For a cab? Yeah,
they'll use a Royer 121, like Nashville.
Okay.
When I'm down there, that's what everybody uses, a 57 and a Royer. That is like the thing.
Did not know that.
I will put a ribbon off, like for Mike and that Marshall, I'll have a guy on there, and then a guy like here, 5 feet away, pan those separate, and that'll give you a little bit of room on the guitar.
Okay.
But 57, hard to beat.
I got 4 of them in that drawer. We initially had 57s for vocals, and it was so good. Just not quite as good as this. But it was so vocally, I mean, it's so universal. Right?
This is just a 57 on steroids. That's
what I'm told. And more money. And more money, too.
Yeah. It's designed for what we're doing for broadcast. That's what this is. And great vocals. Hetfield, Michael Jackson, Bono.
Is it true that Thriller was recorded with this?
The first iteration, these are probably Bs, right?
Yeah, you're the original 70.
So it's a little different windscreen. But damn near the same microphone. It wasn't a 87, a Neumann 87, which was popular for vocals then. It wasn't a 47, which was more popular in the 50s. That's the big Frank Sinatra tube mic. No. 87s and SM7s were what you would use in the 70s and 80s. The back and black vocal, those kind of. The rock vocal was a U87. That was what everybody used.
What's so interesting for me when I decided to do this and I bought the equipment, I had to wrap my mind around the fact that this Bosch, it's a Bosch recorder. What is this? I can't remember. Anyway, a Zoom recorder.
Right.
The Zoom, because their effects pedals I never thought too much of either as a guitar player. But their stuff this is their F8 8-track, and everybody says it's fantastic. And I've
got one of those cameras.
A cloud lifter, it's preamp.
You got it.
It's magic,
isn't it?
It's absolute magic.
Yeah, their
man.
Digital recorder video things. The Zoom stuff is killer.
Yeah, I mean, so I had to wrap my head around the fact that, hey, you know what? You've been out of the game for a long time, and technology is certainly caught up. But dude, I appreciate this, man.
Thank you for having me. I'm a fan of the show. I've seen and learned stuff about people I know, like Sam from Vivo and Chris Winter and Blasey and those guys. Yeah. People I've known for a long time. Watching your show, I get to learn more about them. So
I would love to have you back. And I told you Fred Koala, my sidekick here, was dying to be here. But
he's great.
Freddie would love just to talk music and all this stuff with you, and you guys would probably get right over my head. But
I just watched the one with him and Dave from Nomad, and he was talking about the movie that they were doing.
Yeah, oh my God.
The
road. The road.
He needs to be on stand-up. That was a hilarious story about him having to run and 15 times and scaring the kid.
Dude,
and all
half the stuff he says, and it was he misses the road. Fred misses, as you can imagine.
That's his life. That's what he does.
Yeah. So for him to be grounded at home is a bitch. But I'll get him on here.
Right on.
Please come back and see me, man.
Thank you for having me, Eric. I really appreciate it, brother.
All right, man. All right, friends, we're out.
Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.